What if Harald had saved rocks? What if Harald was also at God Valley? This is a question that came to mind when I saw the tragic end of Rocks. And well, in today's video, we're gonna find out what happens. We know that right before showing up to God Valley, Rocks had one final conversation with Harald at sea. This is where he revealed the fact that his wife and son are at God Valley, and that his true name is Davy D. Rocks. And at the end of this conversation, Rocks asks Harald for his help. We know that Harald refused and that he had his own reasons for doing so, but we also know that not being able to help Rocks destroyed Harald in the end. But let's go into an alternate reality where Harald, the greatest king in Elbaf's history and the only man who is Rocks' narrative equal, actually answered his best friend's call for help. This one decision will change the history of the One Piece world forever. But first, when exactly can we expect Harald to arrive at God Valley and why? After all, it's not likely he'll show up right after Rocks and the others enter the island. He still has to gather his thoughts on what's going on, so when can we exactly expect him? I'd say right after Imu Dami reverses Rocks, or to be more precise, right as the clash between Rocks and Whitebeard destroys one of the two God Valley mountains, Harald would step foot on the island. He'd feel the clash, but he'll also notice the chaos in its entirety. And while it won't be simple to make sense of the situation at that point, I mean, by the time Imu arrives, the chaos is already out of control, and Harald would obviously have a bad feeling about it all. So he takes action immediately. He'll tell the giants to provide refugee to any civilian they can see, and he'll also tell, or rather command them not to follow him. He then follows the haki he felt a minute ago, having already realized it belonged to Rocks. Then in the heat of the moment, right as Rocks is about to hurt Ares and Teach, Harald slashes him away while Ares and Teach are sent flying to safety by Kuma. "What are you doing, Rocks? You are about to hurt civilians," Harald yells at him, but right away he recalls that conversation where Rocks mentioned his wife and child. Wait, could it be? Harald goes. He then takes a good look at Rocks, and while he's naive, he is definitely not as much of a bum as the Rock Pirates, who couldn't even tell after seeing the demonic wings and the increase in size that something had messed with Rocks. "Hey, what's wrong? Why are you looking like that? Say something," Harald continues, but Rocks has yet to say a single word. At the same time, Imu is annoyed. In Imu's mind, the Davy bloodline has been wiped out, but with Harald showing up, what would be the next course of action? After all, as Imu personally told Rocks, the plan is to make Harald a puppet king and use the giants as an army to further the agenda. In the main story, Imu's next order was to kill everyone still alive on the island, but now what? Rocks just stays standing in front of Harald, silent. But soon enough, Roger and Garp enter the chat. "It's you, Harald! What are you doing here?" Garp asks. "Just a favor to a friend, but what's going on here? What happened to Rocks?" Harald replies. "We don't know. There's that big black spider mountain who did something to him," Roger adds. As this conversation is happening, tears start coming out of Rocks' eyes. His voice, through the voice of all things, speaks to Harald, Roger, and Garp at the same time. "Harald, please, just kill me." He speaks to all three, but only calls Harald by name, because now that it has come to this, he'd like to die at the hands of his best friend. At this point, Imu has decided on Rocks' next order. Kill everyone except Harald, but bring him to me alive. Rocks' body acts and the battle begins. Rocks obviously scales above all three of them thanks to the Dami Reversi boost. As for the three of them, you can argue if you want to put Harald above Roger and Garp or not. I personally would, but the main point is that neither of the three can defeat Rocks individually. So they come up with a new plan. Just like Roger and Garp did in the actual story, they decide to hit Rocks with the strongest possible combination of their Conqueror's Haki mass. Harald looks at Rocks' tear-filled face and agrees, and in this moment, Roger and Garp hit Rocks with God of Fire Ace and Infinite Explosion, while Harald follows up with his own Conqueror's Haki attack. The combined Conqueror's Haki of Harald, Roger, and Garp creates a level of power similar to Joy Boy's Haki that we saw back in Egghead. The Dami Reversi is yeeted out of Rocks, but Imu is still around, because while that level of Haki could yeet the Elders back to Mariejois, Imu, as the origin of the Abyss, is a different story. Rocks opened his eyes and sees Harald's face. Roger and Garp are lying down, completely out of gas, which leaves Harald as the only one with some juice left in his system. He speaks with Rox through the voice of all things. Rox thanks Harald for stopping him, but warns him that while this is the end of the road for him, it shouldn't be for Harald. He also reveals the world government's goal of turning the giants into soldiers. Having heard the truth, Harald finally wakes up from his naive delusions. Meanwhile, the Holy Knights trio led by Garling, who kills Rox in the original story, sees Harald talking to Rox, and they bail. They know they can only fight unarmed civilians. When Rayleigh and Gabon come to pick up Roger and Garp, Harald asks them to take Rox to his ship. Sure enough, at the giant's ship, the Giant's doctor and Dr. Crocus from the Roger Pirates treat Rox while Emu makes eye contact with Harald. Emu decides to leave because we know Emu needs Harald through a deep sea contract, not Dami Reversi. Harald, overwhelmed by everything, simply watches Emu leave. Now let me point out two things here. After Dami Reversi was kicked out of Rox, he lost his voice, meaning his internal presence. Just like when Luffy died against Kaido and Law couldn't hear him anymore. The other thing is, Harald hasn't heard everything yet. He still doesn't know exactly what that black spider monster actually was, so fast forward to a few weeks later, Harald and the Giants return to Elbaf along with Rox, who has now recovered. Loki is surprised beyond belief because in the newspaper it said Rox was defeated by Garp, the hero of the Marines. So just as you may have guessed, aside from Rox's survival and Emu having to figure out how to handle Harald going forward, everything else in the world remains the same. Harald asks Rox to tell him everything, and that he does. He tells him about Emu, how that black spider monster was actually the ruler of the world, and how he, as the descendant of Davy D. Jones, is the rightful heir to that throne. He tells him about what happened at God Valley, his homeland, the killing of the natives, and everything else. While it takes a long time to explain, Harald is left with one singular thought. He cannot trust the world government no matter what. Of course, Loki is listening in on all of this. I mean, the conversation is happening at Ida's bar, and you may remember that Rox and Iris had promised to meet at Luluisa should they survive. While Rox knows that Iris and Teach survived because Harald told him he saw a kid sending him away with a devil fruit power, Rox still decides and gets going to Luluisa to meet them. I mean, Iris must have seen the newspaper reporting Rox's death, which means she won't go, and even if she does, it's too early for Rox to show himself to the world. He asks Harald once again to partner up with him. This time, he sells it as them dethroning the celestial dragons to bring about a fairer world. Of course, Harald doesn't expect Rox to be all about democracy all of a sudden, but he finally sees the light. He finally understands that the celestial dragons gotta go. Rox, on the other hand, decides to temporarily leave Elbaf in a disguise with an Elias that says Marshall. He goes to see a few of the former Rox pirates. First is Whitebeard. Rox introduces himself as Marshall to Whitebeard's crew and gains an audience, and then he speaks to Whitebeard in private where he reveals the truth that he is Rox. Whitebeard learns everything that happened on that day, as well as why Rox did what he did, what he seeks to do next, and of course about how he needs Whitebeard's strength. Whitebeard hears him out, and then at the end he agrees. He says, "Well, I owe you for all the times you've been paying for my drinks." And with that, Whitebeard and his crew form an alliance with the pirate that goes by the name Marshall. Rox also visits Kaido and Big Mom, and while he doesn't reveal as much information as he did to Whitebeard, they agree to help him out. Big Mom because Rox mentions the alliance with Harald and Elbaf, and Kaido because it's young Kaido, he'd rather be with the strong. And then there's Shiki. Marshall also reveals his identity to Shiki, and while he doesn't care if Rox is alive or not, he is interested in taking over the New World, and for that, he's willing to form an alliance with Rox and Elbaf. Again, this is all over 37 years ago. None of them have built their own empires yet, so it won't be unusual for them to rejoin Rox as equals. But next is Rox's plan, which requires 2 devil fruits and the Galila giants. Now let me point out that the latest chapter at the writing of the script is chapter 1170, and we've only gotten some genuine confirmation on what Elbaf's legendary fruit may be. We know it's one of the 2 fruits Rox wanted, and that he wanted Harald to eat it because only then would its true power be unlocked. And from what Jarul said during the fight against Harald in the castle, as well as what Loki said in chapter 1130, we can also conclude that just this fruit being eaten is a sign of the end of the world. But will Harald eat it? No. As we see in the chapter, Ragnir is the one who chooses who eats the fruit. I know the way it was framed in the chapter makes it seem like you have to be strong to be acknowledged by Ragnir, but I'm not sure if that's what Oda intended to say. The way I see it, it's similar to the Nika fruit choosing Luffy. That was not about strength as much as it was about Luffy's will and personality. And that's the same case here with Ragnir. Ragnir chose Loki to eat the fruit because of his will and personality. This also explains why Elbaf's legendary fruit had not been eaten for so many centuries. Ragnir was simply waiting for the right time and the right person who had the right dog in him. Harald would understand that. That's why he'll decline and tell Rox that the one who shall eat the fruit will be Loki. Rox is not amused, but he respects Harald's decision. And then even though Loki will be about 24 to 25 in giant years, which is like 8 in human years, Loki will be able to eat the fruit just like Luffy ate the Nika fruit despite his age. He will be much weaker than the Loki that ate the fruit in the original story, but that goes without saying. As for what the fruit actually is, obviously we don't know until Oda spells it out, but with Ragnir being Ratatoskr and considering the silhouette in chapter 1170, the most likely option is Nidhogg, the lightning dragon. There's the myth of the eagle, the squirrel, and the dragon in Norse mythology involving the world tree Yggdrasil, and that seems to be what Oda is going for. Though it could also be Fenrir or Jormungandr or some other fruit. Overall, the only 2 points we need to keep in mind is that it's a legendary fruit similar to the Nika fruit and that it marks the incoming end of the world. Anyway, what about the other fruit? I think we can also agree that it's the Yami Yami no Mi. Since we know for a fact that Rox did not know about Nika, the Yami Yami no Mi is the only other option that has enough setup to be able to bypass Imu. After all, it's said to be able to suck in the devil's power. Finally, there's the matter of the Galila giants. Leave this one to Kaido and Big Mom. Big Mom has her information network that she must have started putting together by this point, and Kaido eventually raids Punk Hazard anyway. And let me also point out that Kaido and Big Mom also start respecting Rox the same way as Whitebeard, in the same way as, let's say, the dynamic between Law and Luffy. Though with Shiki, it'll always be a situationship. Now, it takes 1 year before they manage to nail Punk Hazard as the likely location. In the meantime, many things happen, like Elder Jarul explaining the significance of those giants from Elbaf's perspective to Loki and Harald. Hadruden, on the other hand, would start getting along with Kaido for some silly reason, and he'll start fantasizing about a cool ass devil fruit. Kaido will get in contact with that previous warlord who dealt in ancient Zoans, and Hadruden, as a member of Elbaf's royal family, manages to get a good deal on a cool ass devil fruit. He would get the bird fruit, model Archaeopteryx. Let me tell you why that'd be a brilliant choice for Hadruden and how it'd actually allow him to finally become a relevant giant. Basically, Archaeopteryx is considered the oldest known bird. It has 3 sharp claws on each wing and a sickle claw on its feet, but the best part would be its feathers. You see, feathers are incredibly versatile in One Piece, so a giant like Hadruden with this fruit should be able to do things like generating static electricity and friction by flapping those massive wings. He could even create a hurricane. In fact, with enough friction, Hadruden could create a conflagration. It's funny because when we first see Hadruden in the main story, he's in a tournament to win the Flame fruit, but here he would be replicating fire using friction. Again, keep in mind that we're applying One Piece logic to it, which, as we saw with Queen and Sasaki, can be very free. Hadruden would be in the top tier of normal giants, right below ancient giants like Harald and Loki. Soon, the year-long search ends. Kaido invades Punk Hazard with Big Mom and meets Albert, as in King, who is around 10 years old at this point. During the havoc, they eventually find the Galila giants frozen inside Punk Hazard, but they let them be and simply return with the loot. Only when all other preparations are met will Rox come to Punk Hazard with Harald, free the ancient giants, and then after letting them rest, invade Mariejois. But first, they need the Yami Yami no Mi. Rox asks Loki and Hadruden to find find this fruit, but as expected, it's going to take a long time. I mean, it took Blackbeard 2.5 decades. At this point, soon it'll be around 2 years since the God Valley incident. The elders invite Harald to the reverie, and by the reverie, I mean the one that happened 36 years ago, and ask him if he's willing to form a certain contract. Elbaf would become a member nation, but Harald starts asking too many questions about the contract and ultimately leaves after saying he'll think about it. For the next 3 years, Loki and Hadrudin continue the search. Then 5 years after God Valley, as fate would have it, the search leads Hadrudin to Iris, who is the one who finds the fruit in this timeline. She sees Hadrudin's transformed form and thinks it's one of those satanic demons from the world government, so she quickly force feeds the fruit to the 7-year-old Davy D. Teach. Hadrudin is not sure what to do, but he obviously is not going to take a civilian's life, so he simply restrains them and flies back to Elbaf. When they wake up, the first thing they see is a crying Rox right in their faces. Ares also bursts into tears, and the same goes for Teach after he realizes that this is his father. Still, while all the pieces have fallen together, both Loki and Teach are too young to properly use the full potential of their powers, so the plan is postponed until they're ready. A year later, it's the reverie again, and once again, Harald and the 5 elders are unable to reach a consensus. 4 years later, same thing. Soon, it's been 12 years since the God Valley incident and 13 years since the Roger pirates reached Lodestar Island. Their story happens the same way, with Roger becoming the Pirate King after finding the One Piece a year later, and Rox laughing his ass off while reading the newspaper. By this point, Teach is 15 years old, and his personality is a mixture of Loki and Kaido, definitely not what was in the main story. Shanks, on the other hand, is 14, while Loki has basically mastered his fruit in Ragnir. A little less than 5 years later, Luffy is born. It's about 20 to 21 years before the present moment. Another reverie is about to take place, and this time the elders decide to invite Elbaf not to become a member nation, but to attend as a member nation. They've decided that the contract can wait, and their goal was to getting back on Harald's good side. Harald is pissed beyond belief as he sees the invitation. Keep in mind that this invitation happens less than 2 years after the Ohara incident. Harald understands exactly how evil and disgusting the celestial dragons who rule the world are. His primal instincts from before he became a good person began to resurface, so he asks Rox how much longer do they need to wait. Rox replies that they'll be striking at this year's reverie and that Mariejois will become a war zone. Harald nods and goes to see the royal army of Elbaf that he has personally trained for the past decade. Together with Dory and Bragi, who were called to Elbaf by Harald a decade ago, this army is currently strong enough to rival the Marines minus the admirals. On the other hand, Whitebeard, Big Mom, Kaido, and Shiki also have been gathering allies for this very day. Finally, as all the pieces fall together, Mariejois becomes a battleground exponentially worse than Marineford. It is said that on that day, the army of giants led by Harald and the pirates led by Davy D. Zebek invaded Mariejois and brought Imu, the king of the world, to their knees. But they did not win. They were still too early. 6 of the Holy Knights, 3 of the 5 Elders, 2 of the 3 Marine Admirals of that time, along with the many Celestial Dragons and the kings that died in the collateral damage, are just some of the many losses on the side of the world government. Meanwhile, on the side of the insurrection, there are just as many losses. We have Shiki, Dory, Bragi, hundreds of other giants, and thousands of pirates. But more importantly, it saw the deaths of King Harald and Davy D. Zebek. Right before their deaths, these 2 men realized that today was not the day the world government would fall. It was still not the time. So, to give tomorrow another chance, both Harald and Rox give their lives with smiles on their faces. They die so that Teach, Loki, Hadrudin, Whitebeard, Big Mom, Kaido, and the others can escape to prepare for the war that'll happen in another 2 decades, the war that will engulf the entire world. Yes, it's unfortunate that Rox is unable to win in the end, but in this reality, his name and his dream are laid bare in front of the entire world. Fast forward to about 7 years later, and the Nika fruit chooses Luffy. About 10 more years later, Porgas the Ace is revealed to be the son of the king of the pirates, but both the world government and the Marines are still too weakened from the war with Harald and Rox to now wage war on Whitebeard. After all, Whitebeard was Ace's captain and was also in a three-way alliance with Kaido and Big Mom. Plus, there's a genuine possibility that if they go to war with Whitebeard, the revolutionaries will act and finally dethrone the world government. Just like how the world government is now weaker than it was at this point in the main story, the revolutionaries are significantly stronger. Most of East Blue and over 40 nations are already under their flag. Not to mention the eternal chaos within the Marines. Garp is far more radicalized in this timeline, and Sengoku isn't even sure if Garp wouldn't try to save Ace himself. Yes, exactly. With the military depleted and the internal leadership fractured, the world government is forced to watch from the sidelines as the next generation grows more powerful than ever. Then comes the modern day where Luffy finds the One Piece and the world is suddenly engulfed in the Great War. This time, Luffy, the inheritor of Joy Boy's will, Loki, the inheritor of Rox's will, and Teach, the inheritor of Davy D. Jones's will, together with Hadrudin leading the Giants, Shanks, Ace, the Emperors, and all the other rogue elements, destroy Emu and end the battle that has persisted since the time of Joy Boy. Of course, not all is good, especially because Teach eventually seeks the throne for himself. But as it goes, the one who will decide the fate of the world is going to be the one who finds the One Piece, and in every reality, that man is, of course, Luffy. Luffy finds the greatest treasure in history and uses it to realize his dream, the dream that is still yet to be revealed. Meanwhile, his father, the leader of the revolutionaries, brings the power back to the people. And the story of the third world, as it's meant to be, is finally told through the actions of the man who, as the sun, brings the dawn of the world. And there you have it, guys. This is what my take on what if Harald saved rocks at God Valley is. What do you guys think? Do you agree with my take or do you disagree? And while I said the elders and holy knights die in the war at Mariejois, what do you think is the actual secret to killing the immortals? Yes, kill, not just hurt them. I mean, is it really just more critical conquers hockey as we've been seeing? Let me know your comments down below. If you guys enjoyed, smash that like button for me, and if you guys want to see some more in the near future, smash the subscribe button. But yeah, it's been real. Take it easy and I'll catch you guys in the next upload. Peace.